Hello, my name is Julia Pulver, and I'm going to talk to you today about planning for civil disobedience. This is part of a larger workshop of mine called Wage Peace, a gentle guide for angry people. But with everything going on, prior to the March 1st date of our first workshop, it's been requested that I put out some information about planning civil disobedience actions because of the state of the world that we're in right now. So I'm going to take a few minutes to go over civil disobedience specifically. But first, a little bit about me. So I am a lifelong Michigander. I am a Unitarian Universalist, is where I got my training in nonviolent demonstration and peaceful protest as a teenager back in the 90s. And I've been leading peaceful protests and doing strategy and planning for all kinds of different actions ever since. Um, I am an organizer. I am a peace enthusiast. I'm not just a pacifist in a passive way. I'm a very enthusiastic, peaceful person. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a nurse. I'm an Aquarius. I just had a birthday. And my pronouns are she and her. Okay, so why is it really important for us right now to know about um, civil disobedience and how to do it safely? This is all the reason you need to know right here. Excuse the commercial. So there you have it. Our Secretary of Defense is prepared to shoot protesters if he thinks they have gotten too unruly. And we know exactly what that means. He's going to shoot any protesters and order people to shoot protesters that he doesn't like, that he thinks he can get away with. So, what that means for us now is that this part of American history where protesting is going to be a cornerstone of keeping our country intact, we have got to be not only strategic and intentional, but disciplined, disciplined in how we carry out direct actions. They're going to look for any excuse to start shooting us. They're going to use not only an excuse to shoot us, but any protests that they're going to claim have turned into riots or gotten out of control, they'll use as an excuse to declare martial law and suspend the Constitution. They are goading us. They are basically wishing that we will step over the line so that they can do this. We have to know they are laying a trap for us. We cannot fall into it. So, before we talk about specifically the tactic of civil disobedience, let's make sure we review what exactly makes a protest 100% peaceful in a way that nobody can ever claim that it was not peaceful or that it ever endangered anyone. So the what makes a protest 100% peaceful is that it does no physical harm to anyone directly or indirectly. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not just about not laying hands on people, which is part of it, but not causing indirect harm. So, to that end, a peaceful protest will never, never include carrying weapons of any kind or anything that even could be mistaken for a weapon, such as umbrellas or canes or even skateboards. We saw that used as an excuse, right? As that could have been a potential weapon. Laying hands on anyone without their consent. The second you touch another person who does not want to be touched as part of your action in even the slightest way, it has crossed over into no longer being peaceful. To that end, restricting any individual's free movement without their consent is also, the second you do that, is crosses the line to not being peaceful anymore. We've seen videos of protesters trying to herd people and keep them in certain places or out of certain places, and using blankets to try to shield them and push them in different ways. That is not peaceful. You've not only laid hands on somebody because you've pushed them, you've restricted their free movement. And that is not peaceful either. You cannot trap anyone inside. If you're talking about occupying buildings or shutting things down, to trap people inside of a building and not have a safe egress crosses the line and no longer is peaceful. Please ensure that if you are occupying buildings or doing anything of that, that people who do not wish to be there have an opportunity to leave, that they have a safe egress. You cannot safely or peacefully trap people inside of somewhere. Any peaceful protest, truly peaceful protest, will not use verbal, written, or implied threats or encouragements to harm. And I will remind every single person listening, if you are dedicated to peaceful, nonviolent resistance, stochastic terrorism is not peaceful. Wishing harm, saying, won't somebody please take care of this guy? Well, back to the meddlesome priest. Won't somebody take care of this meddlesome priest? That is not peaceful. Using images of guillotines is not peaceful. No Luigi memes. All right. Murdering somebody is not a peaceful means of resolving problems and should not be lifted up in a peaceful protest as any sort of folk hero. To that end, even eat the rich is not peaceful. All right. Cannibalism cannot be considered a peaceful means of protest. All right. We all need to be disciplined. All right. As much as we may want to lean into dark humor in some regards, and I understand it. I really do. But remember, we need to be disciplined. We cannot give them any excuse to claim that we're really not that peaceful of a movement, that we're really secretly encouraging our members to, storm the Bastille, right? So when we talked about direct harm, indirect harm is another one, right? So a completely 100% peaceful protest will never block access to emergency services. This is where the planning comes in. If you are planning an action that could potentially disrupt traffic, you need to have put things in place beforehand so emergency vehicles can be rerouted. It is not peaceful to make EMS drivers have to choose between potentially plowing through a street full of people, hoping people get out of the way, or letting the person dying of a heart attack in the back die because they can't get through. And those are the exact kinds of things that if your peaceful protest lets happen, immediately will diminish everything you've just accomplished, because now all the media is going to talk about is your protest indirectly killed someone. And the same thing, you cannot place participants in harm's way without explicit consent and planning, and I'll add on top of that, training, and have it be considered 100% peaceful, because that has the potential for indirect harm. And as we talk about things like civil disobedience, where there is going to be violence visited upon the people enacting it because police will be involved, it is unacceptable ever in a peaceful protest to ask anybody to participate or have them participate unbeknownst to them how much they're in for, right? You need to make sure every single person who is engaged in any kind of civil disobedience where they're going to be arrested, that they know exactly what they're doing and they're prepared for it and they're trained for it. So all of these things are a must if you want to maintain the title of a 100% peaceful protest. So here's a question. Can a protest be peaceful that destroys property? Well, it depends, is the answer, right? Here's a picture of somebody taking a sledgehammer to the Berlin Wall, right? So it's possible, property is not people. However, when protests include destruction of property, that gives a permission structure to other people who are not peace minded to come and do harm, right? It's a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse. We remember what happened in 2020 during the protests that were largely peaceful, but there was some destruction of property. It gave him the permission to grab a deadly weapon, cross state lines, shoot and kill people, and get away with it with impunity, right? Because he claimed he was helping defend property. Like I said, property is not people, but if destruction of property becomes part of your action, know that it could potentially cause indirect harm and unintended consequences, things that are caught on fire, right? Fires spread. We have just seen how much damage fires that rage out of control can do in suburban LA, right? Fires spread, and you do not want to be part of any action that sets fires, that spreads and hurts and kills people. You're no longer engaging in peaceful protest if that happens. And again, keep in mind, anytime there's destruction of property, there's going to be an escalated police response. Property owners and emboldened vigilantes will also show up with weapons. So use extreme caution if there's any sort of property damage being done as part of your civil disobedience. And use it only if it is essential to your message and no other possible symbolism would suffice. Sort of thing that comes to mind maybe is destroying Confederate monuments, right? If the destruction of that property is the intended purpose of that civil disobedience, then there really isn't much that is going to be counter to that, but be prepared. All right. Property destruction is a crime. So be prepared for those legal consequences as well. Okay, so we went over again everything that makes a peaceful protest. And there are lots of different ways to do peaceful protests, but we're going to focus today on civil disobedience. And before we do, I'm going to give a warning to anybody who is planning on doing any kind of civil disobedience, which again is purposefully breaking the law, that you must live your stated message 100% of the time. All right, this here is a reminder of COINTELPRO. If anybody remembers or studies history knows that this was an FBI program that was created to infiltrate, disrupt, discredit, or eliminate activist groups and their leaders during the civil rights movement and during the anti-war movement in the 1960s and 1970s. All right, this was a very specific, targeted approach by our own government. And we can only assume that this is going to become even worse under the current regime. Any group that gains enough power in this space, there will be attempts by outside groups or law enforcement to infiltrate your group and sabotage it. They're going to try to get you to go off message. They're going to try to interrupt actions. They're going to try to get you to say things that you don't, normally say, or they're trying to poke holes in it and try to say, see, you're not actually who you say you are, and you're not actually peaceful. All right. A dedication to peaceful means through every single aspect of your movement will be tested from all angles, all conversations, all text exchanges, everything. You have to stay dedicated to it 100% of the time with every single person you interact with. You have to assume that you are being delivered. Somebody is trying to sabotage your movement pretty much at all times. So stay peace focused and only peace focused at every single juncture. Immediately disavow any member of your group that turns to violence or destruction during an action. This is one of the times when movements are the most vulnerable, when a direct action is planned and only peaceful means are being used, and then something happens and some small group within the group decides that they're going to start lighting things on fire, throwing things at the police, that they're going to start chanting things that are violent, that are not in line with what you have put out there as your stated purpose and message. All right. You have to assume when this happens that this could potentially be infiltrators trying to lead your movement astray and discredit you. Every single person that you train for your actions should know to be on the lookout for this and be prepared to immediately resist those calls and redirect anyone who is participating to the peaceful plan and immediately disavow and kick out anybody who is not sticking to the peaceful plan. Always have a when in doubt strategy. If things start to go hinky or sideways, you need to have a plan on how to deal with that. So, when in doubt, sit down, lock arms, and start singing We Shall Overcome, right? Or something. If someone grabs you, right, and starts to do something, you're going to go limp in passive resistance until you're laying on the ground in a defensive position, which is a fetal position, your hands covering the back of your neck, arms protecting your head and ears, and chanting whatever your peaceful slogan is. And I am passive and not resisting. I am passive and not resisting. Whatever it is, have that plan ready, because you will run into situations like this where someone or some part of your movement tries to derail what you're doing, and you need to have a way to have everybody get right back on track, and you need to have a way to distance yourself from anybody trying to do harm. Do not give them any excuse. I have a picture here, obviously, from the tragedy that happened at Kent State. And I'm not victim blaming. I'm just saying they're prepared. They always have been. They've done it before. They are going to be ready to shoot to kill anybody that they think they could get away with from a narrative perspective in the media, shooting and killing. All right. You must stay peace focused at all times. Like I said, immediately reject any and all calls for violent means or rhetoric. Immediately reject it. Do not trust new people. I know we're trying to build up movements as much as possible, and that's great. But if you are planning anything that could potentially be considered against the law, which is civil disobedience, don't trust new people. Thoroughly vet everyone within your movement. All right. And you are trusting that these people are going to follow the plan and are not going to do harm or let harm befall other people. So please be skeptical of anybody new joining your group. Vet people, know who they are, and make sure that they're not somebody who is trying to take you down from the inside. Be paranoid. This is the time for paranoia. It really is. We don't know who we can trust. Verify. Verify everyone. The more they can label us, our peaceful movements, as, like I said, secretly violent or destructive, the less effective we become and the more of a target we become every single time we try to plan for something. They're looking for any excuse, so we cannot give it to them. Effective, peaceful protest takes planning. If you'd like to come to my larger workshop where we go over all the different kinds of protest planning, I welcome you to. We really get into some really creative and unique things, which in many instances is going to be more effective than civil disobedience. And we focus on main components of peaceful protest, like the visuals that are used to draw a distinction between sides, crafting your message, because your message is what it's all about. Why are you doing this thing? You need to be able to create a message and share it in an effective way. And that is going to lead to the impact that it has. So we go over all of that, and I hope to see you all there someday. But we're going to talk about one specific method, which takes immense training and planning, and that is civil disobedience. All right. And again, just keep in mind the second anyone in your action steps a foot over the line, not only do you leave yourself open to violence and really really potentially deadly violence, no one now has to talk about your message, right? This is a battle on so many fronts, and one of the biggest fronts is the messaging battle. If your action does not go according to plan, right? If they can talk about, if the media and are the opposition, and their messaging ecosphere, if they can talk about anything else besides your message, they're going to. They want to. They don't want to have to talk about what we want to talk about. So they're looking for it. And anytime any person steps a toe over the line, that's all they will have to cover. They no longer have to talk about your message. They can be lazy and paint you as just as bad as your opposition, and really fall back into both sides' arguments. So you have to be incredibly deliberate with your display of peace. All right. Any whiff of violence will invite it back onto you tenfold. Being right does not excuse it. We know we're right. That's why we're doing this. But that does not excuse us for, using any kind of violent symbolism, violent messaging, or violent means by any account. So, civil disobedience. Picture here of the Congresswoman deliberately getting arrested in protest. So, civil disobedience is very specifically targeted as a tactic to break unjust laws and fight them out in the court. All right. It works best for unjust laws, protecting vulnerable people. So breaking the law to protect immigrants, anybody who's being targeted, and stopping time sensitive actions, right? So think about tree sitters, people shutting down pipelines, things that are time sensitive where you don't have the ability or the time necessarily to plan other peaceful means. There's something happening that is time sensitive, and the only card you have left to play to save them from cutting down that tree is to sit in it and potentially, trespass and break the law, that sort of a thing. However, the point of a civil disobedience action, if you can stop the time sensitive bad thing or get a reversal, great. But most times it's not going to work. You are, making a stand for something that you believe in, and you're willing to break the law to do that. And like I said, sometimes it can work, but the main point of any sort of civil disobedience action is to get arrested for breaking that unjust law, or to draw attention to your cause through the legal system, through the news coverage of your arrest and the legal trial, right? And the sentencing, that you create a platform for you to talk about your message. And the way you create that platform is through getting arrested by deliberately breaking the law. So civil disobedience includes things like trespassing. And I will remind you, any single time you are in a place protesting, yes, you have a First Amendment right to be somewhere to a point. If you are directed by police to vacate an area, if some police tell you you are now engaged in an unlawful assembly and you must disperse, if you choose not to, you are breaking the law. You are trespassing. This includes things like unauthorized encampments. All right, we saw a lot of different encampments go up over the summer in protest. And a lot of people, a lot of students got arrested for ignoring lawful orders to disperse, which is fine. The next step would be use that arrest and that court appearance and possible sentencing appearances to draw attention to your cause. All right. I know a lot of people are fighting those charges, saying they shouldn't have been arrested because other groups aren't always arrested or something like that. The point of civil disobedience, of breaking the law, is to get arrested and to use that arrest and court proceedings and sentencing proceedings and all the media that's associated with it to draw attention to your cause. All right. You cannot break the law and then be surprised when you are arrested. The point is to get arrested. All right. And that also includes things like blocking traffic, blocking building entrances. Remember again, if you want to be considered 100% peaceful, if you're going to block traffic or you're going to block entrances to buildings, if you cause indirect harm, if you're blocking a freeway and emergency vehicles can't get through and someone dies because of your action, doesn't matter if you're right. Guess what? You've caused harm. That was not a peaceful protest. It wasn't. It was a protest. That doesn't make it peaceful. All right. So please be very, very deliberate when you decide to do things that could cause indirect harm. If you want to shut something down, you make sure that everyone is going to be able to go home safely at the end of the day. And that includes the people involved and the people not involved. But the biggest one is breaking unjust laws purposefully. All right. Be prepared to be arrested. If you are planning a civil disobedience action, do not ever be surprised when you get arrested. The point is to get arrested. I can't say this enough. If you're doing a peaceful protest that is there's a million different ways to protest that are 100% within your rights and within the law, that you will never be arrested for because you've not broken the law. All right. This is talking about specifically breaking the law to make a point. So here's a picture here of Susan B. Anthony being struck down in the street by a cop for attempting to illegally vote. That's what she was doing. Women weren't allowed to vote. She went to vote. She broke the law by trying to vote. They smacked her down in the street. All right. So not only do you have to be prepared to be arrested, you need to be prepared to potentially be brutalized by the police or vigilantes, because now we've got newly emboldened, armed vigilantes that may be part of this as well, paramilitary groups. All right. Civil disobedience takes a lot of discipline while being arrested and potentially brutalized, not to fight back. All right. You want to be focused on only those charges when you're being arrested. You cannot resist in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, you may go limp and have to be carried out, but you cannot push back. You can't even really shout back. All right. You have to accept being arrested. You do not want additional charges added, like assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, any of those kinds of charges that could be added to the one charge, the one thing you broke the law for that you want to draw attention to in court. That is the only thing you should be arrested for. Okay. Being arrested and instigating a legal battle has changed many unjust laws. It really has. But the point is to initiate a legal battle. All right. So be sure that everyone participating is prepared to be arrested. All right. Now, this is where planning the effort is really important, and who you invite to participate is really important. This is going to initiate a legal battle. So anyone that has a prior arrest record, current warrants out for them, even unpaid parking tickets or child support, anybody whose legal status is questionable, their documentation status is questionable, they need to be fully aware that this is going to have another legal implication for their life. And maybe they're not the right person to ask if you're looking for people to volunteer for an action. Okay, so keep that in mind. We also need to be aware racial discrimination, like I said, immigration status or other variables that are going to put people in danger of participating in a civil disobedience action. People who have kids, people who are caregivers. If you being arrested, potentially not released for who knows how long they decide to release you, they're not going to operate by the rules. If you don't have somebody who is able to take care of your kids, that's maybe you're not the right person to ask to do this. Now, this is a great opportunity for people with privilege, especially white people, right? White people, this is a chance for you to step up and say, if we're doing this and someone's going to have to be arrested for this, I'm going to use my power and privilege. That's going to shield me more than somebody who does not have the same power and privilege as I do. I can take the legal hit. I will be the one to do it. All right. There's a picture here of comedian and actress Amy Schumer going and participating in civil disobedience to protest the Supreme Court hearings, confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, right? And she went there to disrupt that, knowing she was going to be arrested. All right. So she's an example of a person who is going to use her power and privilege uh, to do that action because she knows she is going to be okay. Right. So here's a chance. If you are a person of privilege, if they're looking for somebody to potentially go and be arrested, here's your chance. Okay. You must, though, notify everybody who's participating in this action. And again, the plan is to be arrested. You need to make sure everyone knows this plan. Your family needs to know. You need to let them know where, what courthouse you're likely going to be taken to. Notify that if you've got an attorney, make sure that they're on standby. Your family has bail money. Have your ID on you for when you are arrested. All right. Like I said, this is part of the plan. You should never be, if you are participating in a fully legal, peaceful protest, you don't ever need to be arrested. But if you are participating in civil disobedience, which is intentionally breaking the law because you don't believe that law is just, you must plan to be arrested. Have your ID on you. All right. That said, if you're planning a large civil disobedience action, make sure that everyone in your group knows that they can have only defensive gear. Like I said, peaceful protesters will never carry anything that could be considered a weapon. So hard hats can't be really considered a weapon if you keep them on your head. Protective eyewear, face mask for pepper spray, gas masks, those are all fine. Those are defensive. Okay. No tactical gear, nothing, like I said, that even skateboards, anything that can be considered a weapon, they will consider it a weapon. And I would like for you to remember again, optics are important. Okay. Court cases could hinge on how civil disobedience actions play out. Do not derail the case you wanted to try in court with, anything else that's gonna go down, right? You should have part of your strategy is your legal strategy, is your court strategy. Don't let anything that happens in the meantime get in the way of that. So I have a picture here of a scene from the movie The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Great movie. Go and watch it. But here's a still from that where a large group of people turned a corner and were faced with the Chicago Police Department. And in there were also a bunch of FBI agents and people who had infiltrated this group as well. So again, vet your people. But this was a situation where things got out of hand and people turned violent, and the people who organized it were put on trial for it. And it's a whole thing. But my point is, if you're doing an action that's breaking the law, you want to know as part of your strategy how that's going to play out in court. And you cannot let anything in the moment derail the court case that you want to have. So I will leave you with this quote from Gandhi. Civil disobedience or passive resistance is a method of securing rights by personal suffering. It is the reverse of resistance by arms. All right. When you engage in civil disobedience, you say, I am willing to take the punishment on myself in order to secure other people's rights and freedoms. It is one of the hardest and most dangerous things that you can do. And if you do not have the temperament or the heart or the mind to be able to do that peacefully, do not engage with that. All right. Civil disobedience it takes enormous planning, dedication, and discipline. It is not something that you should plan to do on a whim. You're going to get people hurt or killed. All right. Use it with extreme caution and only when it is the only method left to get something done. So, with that, I will leave you. Thank you for listening. And I hope that you are able to attend our wage peace workshop on March 1st at Birmingham Unitarian Church in Bloomfield Hills on Woodward, 12:30 to 4:30. Thank you so much.